I've got to read this so I don't miss anything, but I met Linda a couple of years ago in a storytelling class. As stories unfolded, she always had one, and it was worth listening to. There were good ones, and I don't think there were no bad stories, no terrible stories, but all fascinating, and people she had met, places she had been. It kind of, my daddy and I talked about being truck drivers when we were little, when I was little. It didn't work. So Linda Hemmings, she's going to tell us about road safety around 18-wheelers, focusing on information you need to know about big trucks and firsthand information from a truck driver. She's got vast experience in the field of truck driving. She's graduated from truck driving school in 1983 when she was 12. And I would never lie. The course of her career, she has driven 5, 8, 9, 10, and 13-speed trucks. Is that for like going up hills or down hills that you need?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my only intelligent question. Her first job pulled flatbed trailers to drop deck as well as lowboy and tankers to construction sites. One of the stories she told in the storytelling class was about driving a big old long flatbed trucks with rebar or something in it in downtown Atlanta.
Precast concrete.
Precast concrete in downtown Atlanta. I mean, I don't like to drive my four-wheeler downtown Atlanta. She double-stacked flatbed trailers on return trips, pulled over width, over length, over height, and overweight loads for a span of 2 years. And never got caught.
Twice.
But they were nice, right? Within her next truck driving position, she drove nationwide, pulling 45, 48, 53-foot beds and double trailers. Linda continued to expand her career in truck driving over the years as she owned a company with her second husband transporting cars. In addition, she has served as the director of training at 2 truck driving schools and taught over 200 students to drive. After retirement, she stays home and eats bonbons. She told me that, anyway. She began teaching an AARP safe driving course and taught it for 3 years, and then followed by an additional truck driving position involving transporting race cars for a professional race team. She was born in the Czech Republic, Bohemia now, raised in Germany after her father's death. She has lived in Georgia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey, Florida, Texas, California, Colorado, and the best is Alabama. Currently, Linda and her husband remain active in the community and fellowship with friends and her husband, who still drives part-time at the age of 82. So, Linda, thank you so much for being here.
Okay. Two statements that people, when they meet me, they go, "You don't look like a truck driver." And I go, "What are they supposed to look like?" Because there's a lot of women out there now. Now, when I first started driving, the only women you ran into were women that were driving with their husbands. A lot of them didn't know how to back up. All they did was do the long miles from here to California. The other statement, a lot of times it's more like a question, is what do I do around trucks? And my statement on that is, get away from them. In a car or in a truck, I don't get anywhere near a truck. If you're going to pass a truck, pass the truck. Don't stay next to it. If you can't pass, then get far enough behind it that you don't get in trouble with that truck. And I'll tell you some of the ways you can get in trouble with a truck. And the biggest problem I had with trucks next to me is they're on cruise control. And they don't want to get off cruise control. So they stay there and they stay there and they stay there, okay? I never played any tricks on the road, but I never allowed anyone to stay next to me for very long. Because if something happened to me, so let's put it this way, if one followed me for a long time, they get tired of looking at the back of the truck, and then they move over. And now they're right at the tail end in the left-hand lane, just sitting there. That jeopardizes my life when they do that, okay, in truck. Because if something happens ahead of me, I've got to jam on the brake, and guess where they are? They're right next to me. And they're taking one of my options away. So I've been on the interstate, taken my foot off the accelerator and gone down to 35 miles an hour, and guess where that car is? It's still right there. They're not paying attention. So that's just one of the things I wanted to tell you. I want to tell you how I got into truck driving. My husband, present husband, which I've been married to almost 39 years, was a truck driver. And for 2 years, he kept saying, why don't you learn how to drive a truck? And I go, no, I don't think so. Well, he finally wore me down, and I went to truck, and he says, they're so desperate for truck drivers, you don't even have to worry about any kind of grade or anything. Just go to school. And I go, okay. So I went to Chipley, Florida, and at that time, that was one of the top truck driving schools in the United States. And the first thing they tell me when I get down there, you've got to maintain 80 or better, or you can't come out. I went home in tears. I said, I'm never going to make it. So I didn't have any problem. I came out of the school with a 98. That's a combination road and backing. And identifying, they make you go around, and you've got to tell them what everything is on that truck. My husband had arranged for me to go with him double with overnight transportation, which is now UPS Freight. And that's why I went to truck driving school. I come out of truck driving school and they go, no, we can't take you unless you have 2 years experience. So I said, okay, they want experience, I'll give them experience. So I started looking around, and one afternoon we're at home and the phone rings, and my husband's talking to David James, who owns Cast Stone Corporation. They haul precast concrete to construction sites. And I hear him said, David James has asked my husband if he knew any drivers. My husband turns to me and says, yeah, I know a driver. And I go, what? So I went to hauling precast concrete to construction sites. The school in Chipley was 6 weeks. My husband went with me for a week. And the first job I had was hauling barracks building to Fort Benning. We went out there, and the mud was this deep. And I dropped a trailer, and I had to pick one up. And my husband said, you got one chance of hooking to that trailer, or you're going to put so much track in there, you'll never get the trailer. So I nearly sent that trailer about 2 blocks down the road trying to get that trailer. Now, in this day and time, when you drop a trailer, it stays there, the brakes lock. At that time, the brakes didn't lock. So when you jammed it and you didn't catch it, it just kept going. So you had to try to get it the first time, okay? Got to put my glasses on. I learned a lot on that job because I haul precast to banks, schools. The biggest job I had was downtown Atlanta. If you've ever been downtown and seen the Marriott Marquis Hotel, I hauled $5 million, this was 30-some years ago, $5 million worth of concrete. This hotel was like 3 stories below ground and 50 stories up. I hauled all the bottom part of the hotel is square. I hauled all the wall pieces, and it like I said, it's 50 stories up, and it's built like a stovepipe. If you go in there and get a hotel room, you have a balcony to the outside, and when you walk out of the room, you have a railing, and you can look down into the lobby no matter what floor you're in. So I hauled all of those balcony railings, all of that in there, okay? I hauled sand, gravel, cement with a tanker. I took a load to Montgomery that was going to a church that was like 15 feet high. And the manager at Castone, I had, I'm trying to remember, 9 different plant managers in 2 years. He says, just get off the exit and get back on. I said, these bridges don't all have get-offs and get-ons. So I had another driver follow me, and he says to me, he says, you're getting so close to those bridges, I can't follow you anymore. I'm afraid of the concrete coming to me. So when I got to Montgomery, I had to watch the overhead lights. There's 2 sets, and I had to go between them and between these so I wouldn't tear them off. So that's just a little bit of that. I helped my husband start a company transporting cars. He did this after he retired the first time. He's retired about 6 times so far, I think. I'm not sure. And after 2 years, he says, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. He says, this is too much work. I didn't retire to work this hard. So he let that go. I then went to a truck driving school. They had just started it on Highway 80. It's still there. It had a different name. And I went there to apply, and John Stanford, who owned the company, he was probably 6'3". He was standing on the door sill, and I said to him, I said, I've come for a job. And he looks down at me, he says, we've already filled the secretarial position. I said, good, that's not the one I came for. So when he found out all the experience I'd had, not only with the precast concrete, but getting the job with overnight transportation, he hired me on the spot. So okay. I want to tell you a little joke that passes around truck drivers. There's a tourist out west, and he comes up to a cowboy, and he said, can you explain to me why you wear everything you wear? He says, well, I wear this here 10-gallon hat to keep the sun out of my eyes, but it comes in handy when that horse gets thirsty. So he says, the scarf, he said, keeps my neck from being tanned, but if we hit a sandstorm, I can cover my face. So he gets down to his chaps, and he says, what are those for? He says, well, you know, you get out in the brush, and it keeps me from getting torn up in the legs. And he said, why have you got tennis shoes on? And he said, what do you think, I'm a truck driver or something? I'd like to tell you how truck driving has changed over the years. When I first started driving, I had an Alabama license, and to go to Chipley, Florida for school, I also had to get a Florida license. Totally legal. And after I came out, I just didn't use the Florida license, I used the Alabama license. But at that time, anyone in the state of Alabama, if they had a driver's license, could also drive a truck. Wow. So after I drove 15 years, I had to they came up with the CDL, Commercial Driver's License. And the reason they did that, because years ago, drivers would use 2 licenses. If they got too many points on one license, they'd just go to another state, get another license. And that's how that came about. So what happened at that time was there were 6 different tests you had to take. And if you had driven 14 years, you were grandfathered in. So you had drivers that had been, like my husband, out there for years and years and years, and now they had to prove that they could drive a truck. So these men, they would say, forget it, I'm not doing it. All of a sudden, the United States was like 75,000 drivers short because of that. There's a good thing about that. Truck drivers, for the most of the time that I drove, it was you could drive 10 hours, and then you had to get out of the truck for 8, which that was okay, it was doable. They decided to do research to make it safer. Now, they took years. They even went overseas and asked people. What did they come out with? Now, 11 hours driving, 10 hours out of the truck. And at one time, the most you could drive in a week was 70 hours. And if you use those 70 hours, the way the log system went, you had to wait a period of time to start picking up. Say at the beginning of the 70 hours, if you drove 8 hours, then on the 8th day, 9th day, you'd have to wait to pick that 8 hours back up. Okay, so sometimes you'd end up in a motel out in the middle of nowhere trying to get time. So they changed that to still driving 70 hours a week, but now you're off 36 hours and you accumulate the 70 hours again, which I don't think makes you any safer. Right now in the United States, you can pull 80,000, in other words, gross weight, truck and everything, 80,000 pounds. Now let me tell you something about Alabama. And which I did, if you drive on the back road, I can gross 88. Does that make sense? I couldn't tell you how many times I drove with 88,000 pounds. I would go up to Leeds, Alabama and pick up bulk cement in a tanker. I'd go on top and sweep the thing off so I could get the hatch down. And they'd ask me, you're going to go down 280, right? And I go, yeah, and hit the interstate. Because I would not, it was always early in the morning, I would not jeopardize anyone's life by going down 280 at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning when all the school buses were out. Because it's a lot harder to stop 88,000 pounds. But let me tell you something a lot of people don't realize. An empty trailer is harder to stop than a full trailer. Because the truck is made, the brakes are made to stop that load. So when you get on the brakes real hard, that trailer goes and it loses traction. So it's harder to stop an empty trailer. Today, at one time, I went to school for 6 weeks. I came out driving a truck. The new rule, pretty much everywhere, Now, Southern Union has a truck driving school, and it's 6 weeks. But a lot of your schools that are not tied to a university or to a VOTEC are 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And what happens now, when I came out, I could just go out and drive. Now, almost all of the students have to go with a trainer when they come out of truck driving school. The problem with that is they don't have enough trainers. So you've got drivers out there that graduated truck driving school 6 months ago that are becoming trainers. Okay, I can get behind a truck and tell you how long they've been out of school, of just on how they handle the truck. Okay, in truck driving school, I could tell these stories all day long. I had a student. This is when Clinton reduced the armed forces down. People, men and women, were coming out of the military with like 12 years, 10 years. They didn't have a job that translated to a civilian job. So they were allowed to get training. So the school out on Highway 80 had heavy equipment training and truck driving. So we had a student, the reason he had to leave the military, he lost the sight in one eye. And he came to me, he did the heavy equipment training. He says, Linda, will you train me to drive a truck? I said, if you're willing, I'll train you. So the morning that he started, we had, I would take 3 students at a time to test. And that morning I had 3 students I had to take. They had hired this crotchety old truck driver. If you can imagine an old truck driver, I'm talking old truck driver. I said, the students in the back, you need to teach them how to back up. I want you to take the truck, drive it around the field, show them the different backing positions, and when they get in the truck, tell them not to touch anything. Just drive. So he had this student with the one eye, and he didn't show him anything. He says, boy, get in that truck. And he says, go in there and back it into the hole. And that's what anytime we have to back in, they call it a hole. Doesn't matter where you go. And this student drives around, and he drives around, and the crouchy old truck driver stops him, and he says, what's the matter with you? He says, well, I'm trying to find the hole. Now, think about it. He just spent 6 weeks digging up holes and covering them back up. And he was trying to find the hole that he's supposed to put this trailer in. And the crotchety old truck driver says, what's the matter with you? Are you blind or something? He says, well, I am in one eye. So, okay. Most drivers out there are paid, one, by the hour, like UPS, okay, by the mile, and they go by the moving guide. In other words, that's how the crow flies. That's how you get paid. The other one is by the load. In other words, if a load, say, pays $5,000, you get a percentage of that $5,000. Let's see. Yeah. There's 3 different types of trucking, basically. It's companies like UPS or FedEx that goes by a certain size. They'll put tape measure around or weight. Then you have what they call LTL, which is less than truckload. And I drove quite a bit of that. You can have one piece in there, or you could have 300 pieces, just depending. We took a trailer to California, and the inside of the trailer weighed 5,000 pounds, and it was loaded to the gills. And it was greeting cards, real lightweight. And one time I had one axle in the trailer, just one bill. And then there is what they call truckload. The driver goes and picks up a load, and then he delivers it to his destination. With LTL, they have city drivers, the less than truckload. They have city drivers that pick it up all day, and they also deliver during the day. At night, they come back to the terminal, and they distribute that. They'll have trailers. This one's going up to Charlotte. This one's going to Florida. This one's... And they take everything they've picked up that day and distribute it into those trailers. And that's what I did a lot. I went terminal to terminal, okay? When I first started with Estes Express Line, the company I retired from, the first 6 months I said, man, I've seen a bunch of these terminals. So I decided to go back 55 terminals in 6 months. And the company only had 76 terminals at that time. And when I retired from them, they had 176 terminals all over the United States. Okay. I'm going to put some of you on the spot. You've probably all seen signs on the back of trailers. It says, if you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you, right? Have you seen that? How far do you think a truck has to be behind that, a car has to be behind that truck? In order, if I'm driving the truck, for me to see you back there, how far does the car have to be? Now, I'm not talking about daylight, I'll see your shadow. At night, I see the headlights. I'm talking about actually seeing your car. How far? Anybody have an idea? Truck drivers don't even have the right answer a lot of times on this one. 80? Any other guesses?
100 yards. 100 yards.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Okay. Any other tries?
According to how far the mirror goes out.
Depends on what?
How far the mirror goes out.
Well, they're all pretty standard. When I started driving, there were very few trucks with the nose out in front. They were all flat in the front. Now, most of your trucks are made with the nose out in front, and believe it or not, if they're in the wreck, that motor goes down underneath them. They're made to go underneath the driver. But the answer is 200 feet. That's almost 3 truck lengths. Okay? So, yeah.
What would be the overall length of the 2 trucks pictured there? If they're pulling a 53 or 54-foot trailer, what's the total length of the entire wheel?
Most states, and it varies, it's just like you see some trailers where the back axle on the trailers, that's Montana. That's where those came from, the split axle like that. That's to distribute the weight. Drivers, most of them, it just depends on what state you're in. Some is 65 feet length, some is 75, and some in between.
That's pulling a single, not a double.
Single, yeah. Now the doubles are usually, they're 28 feet apiece. And then you've got the dolly, they call it a dolly in between, okay? And when I was working for Overnight Transportation, I was one of the trainers. If they hired someone, I had to take them out and test them. And the city dispatcher would take them out, I drove first out of Atlanta with this company, and then when they opened a terminal in Casita, Alabama, by the truck stop, exit 70. The city dispatcher would take them to the truck stop, which wasn't like a quarter of a mile, make them drive through the truck stop and then come back to the terminal. And when I got back in, they'd want me to check them, and I go, okay, let's go do a road test. I just took one, and I go, no, 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 you're about to get one, because I wanted to make sure they knew how to drive, because for the rest of the week, they went with me. They had to stay with me for a week. Now, don't get that wrong. We drove at night to our destination and came back in, okay? We were at home during the day, but they had to be with me for 5 days before they could go out on the road, and I also had to teach them how to pull double trailers and how to put them together and also put them back apart, okay? And the dollies weigh about 3,000 pounds. And you can have a hole in the ground about that big and that dolly won't move. It absolutely just will not move. A lot of times you'll have to hook it to the truck just to get it to go where it needs to go. So. The biggest thing on the road that, let's do this. I want to ask some of you what your pet peeves are on the road today. When you're driving, what really bugs you? Any suggestions?
One thing, just driving over to the Atlanta airport, anytime you're on the interstate, I prefer to just stay in the right lane because the left lane starts to look like a picture from Talladega.
Yeah.
All the cars out there are just a few feet apart, like they just can't wait to get around the next one and the next one. I'm not going to get over there.
Yeah. Let me clarify on that. That's one of my pet peeves too. Especially as a truck driver. A lot of places, like going around Atlanta, trucks are restricted to the right 2 lanes when you get into multiple lanes. And say coming from Chattanooga, coming down, it's 3 lanes on one side. They get in the middle and they bog the whole thing up. I had a student tell me, I came from Chicago, and he said, I stayed in the middle lane all the way down. And I said, you're the one I got stuck behind because you can't go anywhere, you know? Now, used to, if a truck got in that middle lane and just bogged it up, you could get on the CB radio and give them, 1-4. Now they don't have CB radios. They have computers, they have their cell phone, they have all this other stuff. So they just, and the younger drivers, because they grew up that way, right there, that's where they stay in the middle, trucks.
My pet peeve is that I typically, if the speed limit is 70, I'll drive 70 or a little bit below. And I'm blown off the road. I'll get in the right lane, and I know people are going past me at 85 or 90 with no doubt. And my reactions and my eyesight certainly aren't what they were a few years back. And I feel like I ought to go slower, but the slower I go, the more you get run over. Speed limit doesn't mean anything.
I think the last I heard, they won't stop you unless you're going 15 over. It used to be 10, now it's 15, believe it or not. But the great thing about Georgia is now enforcing youth being in that second lane over. I have a friend of a friend. There were 6 of us, we went out to dinner and she drove in the left-hand lane. I said, Barbara, you need to go over. No, I pay my taxes. I'm gonna run this road. I said, okay. Then when we're coming back, somebody's getting off the exit and she slows down to 40 miles an hour to let them on. I said, Barbara, Do you know you can get killed that way? I mean, have some sense. You know, use your head. Now, I will tell you this on the truck. If there's no one out there, I try to be polite and move over in a car or a truck. If there's a lot of traffic, I'm not going to go over. I just won't do it. I'm jeopardizing my life when I do that, okay? When it comes to a truck coming off of an exit, trying to get on the interstate, I watch my mirrors from the time I'm at the top of the ramp. I'm watching the whole time until I can see traffic, because I want to keep that truck moving. I don't want to enter the interstate at 10 miles an hour. And if I do that, you're going to get stopped behind me until I can get those gears going, okay? So I try to make an exception whenever I can. If a truck's coming off, if I can at all get over to get him, because as I'm coming off the ramp in a truck, I'm trying to get some speed up before I enter the traffic. Okay? Does that make sense? How should I say this? One of my pet peeves is turn signals. They were put in the car for a reason. To use them. People don't use them anymore. And now the new generation truck, now you see trucks not using the turn signals. And it just, there's this sign that I got a picture of: forget world peace, visualize using your turn signal. Let me tell you something, you can save your own life if you use your turn signal. And I'll give you an example. Going around like 285 in Atlanta, always use my turn signals in a car or a truck, because you'll start to come over and somebody from this lane's coming over at the same time. If he sees your turn signal, he's likely to stay where he is, okay? But if I was in a truck and I started to come over and somebody, they run 90 miles to nothing around there, they'll come over. Instead of me as a truck, I can't come back over there because someone's already starting to use this lane, okay? So you're likely to see a truck straddle the line, until this car gets out of the way, and then the truck will continue on over, okay? Trucks can't ever go back where they came from. They'll take someone out. And one of the first things I learned in truck driving school is, and this is why I can't understand people driving in the left-hand lane, why would I want to go into the median if something happened and possibly go into headlong traffic? That just doesn't make sense to me. In truck driving school, they go to the right. If something happens, always go to the right. It's the lesser of the evils. You might end up in a ditch, but you're going to be alive. So always go to the right. And hopefully that person knows to go to the right too. Okay? I'm out west. I was driving one night, and I'm going, I thought this was a 4-lane because I had a car coming toward me. So you have to watch for that, especially out west. People get sleepy. They're not paying attention or anything. There's a joke. This is 2 Peterbilt trucks. Can't remember which one I drove. I drove one, my husband drove the other one. There's a joke about truck drivers. They die and go to heaven so they can get a Peterbilt because they're very expensive trucks, okay? That truck was $130,000, just the truck. Uh-huh. I'm going to get more and more into that. We had to take all kinds of tests when we were in truck driving school. I remember sitting in the classroom, and we were in that classroom for an entire week, and they had a big window, and I could see people backing up the trucks out there and everything. I thought, darn, I'm never going to get out there. So when I started truck driving school, the very first day I had people in the truck. I'd have people in the morning in the classroom, in the afternoon, and the next day would switch. They'd be in that truck right away. So I'm trying to, one of the things was going to the right, okay? Trying to remember some of the, I've had so many things. I've gone to, all these companies have safety meetings. We'd see videos. In truck driving school, I probably saw 15 videos of different examples and things. One of them was, it put you in like in the driver's seat, and then you had to identify possible things that could cause you harm, like a child on the side, a school bus, or a dog running across, okay? I had one accident in the 30 years that I drove. I was coming out of Nashville, and I saw the blue lights, and normally people don't pay attention, but trucks try to get away from the whatever's happening. So 2 drivers had passed me. Oh, no problem, somebody's just switching out tractors. In other words, the truck died, and they brought a replacement truck, and they were in the process of that, and there was a state trooper there. And this is something that you've got to remember. Try not to overdrive your headlights at night. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. I went over with the other 2 drivers, and the 2 other drivers were faster than I was. And just as I'm getting up there to the wreck, a car stops in front of me. In nighttime, you can't tell if the car is moving or if it has stopped. All you see is lights. So you catch up. I had already slowed down to 55 miles an hour. And in very short period of time, you're there. And that car was stopped. And I blew my horn, and he took off, okay? Well, I was pulling double trailers, and Flatback Max, there's a picture up here, they were notorious about brakes grabbing on one side, and it put me into the median. And when you're driving, you try to visualize things that might happen, okay? So in my mind, I'm saying, okay, I'll ride it out. Doesn't work that way. That median's not smooth. And we have air ride seats in the truck. In the median, I'm up and down like this. And all I see is headlights. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm going across the interstate. So I jammed on the brake to try to stop the truck before I hit oncoming traffic, and it completely jackknifed out in the grass. And what happened was the dolly, the landing, when you drop a trailer, it's got feet, and one of those went into my fuel tank. And you don't have to worry about diesel fuel. You really have to work to get diesel fuel to spark. But it caused a hole, and because my trailer is going this way, my tractor is going this way. That's what they call a complete jackknife. So they came with a wrecker, pulled me back around, and I had to go back toward Nashville. They had an accident investigator come, and he says, what do you think happened? And I said, I think I got pushed into the median. I said, I don't think my back trailer engaged. And so I said, tomorrow, check the tread marks. And that's exactly what happened. The back did not engage for some reason, and it pushed me in. They put me back together with clothes hangers and duct tape. And I drove that thing down Mount Eagle. It's a 7-mile hill. And got to Atlanta. And we have safety people in the companies. And he asked me, Linda, you've had time to think about this. What would you do different than you did last night? I said, stayed at home. He didn't like my answer, okay? Okay, I pull stuff out of magazines all the time, and you may want to write this down. While I'm thinking about that, if you're out on the interstate somewhere and you have a problem, you can call star 47, and a state trooper will answer, and they'll find you. Star 47. Okay? Anywhere. Star 47 on your phone. But here, instead of dialing 911, use the Rapid SOS Haven app. It sends your exact UPS location to the 911 dispatcher system. Even when you have limited connection, then after you hang up with the dispatcher, the app shoots a text to the emergency contacts to let them know you're in trouble. It does cost. It's on iTunes, free for the first year, and then after that it's $3 a month. But if you do a lot of traveling, it might be worth considering. They've started putting signs in Atlanta. The first one was on southbound 85 coming into Atlanta. And it shows just an outline of a truck. And then it shows a car, outline of a car. And it's basically telling you, don't come in too early after you drive a truck. After you go around a truck. In other words, go further out before you go in. It took me the longest time to figure out why cars were coming in so early. Years ago, they always went way out and came in. Now you've got them coming in within feet. And the bad part, half of them put their brakes on. So I thought about it, and then it finally hit me. Years ago, we didn't have the side mirrors on cars. Do you remember that? One of the things you found out, you use your rear view mirror, and when you see the front of the car that you're passing, you then come in, right? Well, if you do that, you're going to come in further out. If you use your side mirrors, you're going to come in too early. So think about that. The next time you go to pass someone, use your rear view mirror, and you'll be out far enough before you come in. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Just remember that trucks have terrible, terrible blind spots. I really hate to pass someone on this side. This side. Because I can't see real well there. The whole right side of that truck is bad. It's not good. Now, what they've done on trucks, in the early years we just had mirrors here. Now, on trucks, you have mirrors here, you have the round mirrors down here, but if you have a nose out front, there's another set of mirrors there. So most drivers will set the ones up here in front where they can see back to the axle on the tractor. That way, a lot of times, a car can be next to me, I don't see them. They're, you know, I'll start to go over and I watch, and they can disappear underneath you, believe it or not. So, and then these mirrors, I want to set them where I can see all the way back to the back axles. Okay? And the round mirrors, that's for movement. If I pick up any kind of movement, then I'm going to check the big mirrors to see where somebody might be. Okay?
Are those trucks equipped that way?
Do what?
Are those two trucks equipped that kind of mirror? Possible for us to see it in the picture?
We had mirrors on there.
I see the two sides.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big, high. The ones you
They were,
ground mirrors?
they were, some are hooked to the side here, some on the fender, but the ones we had were right there on the edge of the,
Way up front.
yeah. Does everybody know what the move over law is? Move over law is, and it's different in every state. It's if there's a blue light or a red light, ambulance, safety type person over here, if it's safe to move over, they want you to move over. Okay? In Georgia, they've got the same one, but they say if it's safe to move over or slow down so you can stop. So they're all different. Now in Alabama, amber lights also have that same respect. So be careful. You've got to move over. They can give you a hefty fine for not moving over. Okay? I gave one class and I said, do you know what move over law is? She said, yeah, I know. I got a ticket in Florida. Remember motorcycles? You've all heard somewhere along the line and never saw the motorcycle. Guess what? He didn't see it. Our brains are so in tuned to look for cars that we don't see the motorcycle. So just be aware. The other thing is, a motorcycle can stop on a dime. So give them extra time. And while I'm thinking about it, they tell you to slow down a second or two. I found some things that I've done as I've gotten older. One, I give extra time. In truck driving school, I said, remember, you know, if you're involved in an accident or something, you've got a split second to make a decision on what you're going to do. And whatever happens, that'll be with you for the rest of your life. So what's one more second or two behind? And as we get older, because our reaction time is not as good, give yourself that extra time. One, to slow down. Two, to make a decision on what you have to do. Okay? The other thing is, when I first started driving, I'd worry about people behind me. I finally came to the conclusion that if they were in that much of a hurry, they should have left earlier. Okay? If you're on a 2-lane road and you notice a lot of cars behind you, see if you can find a safe place to move over let them go on because you won't be aggravated and they won't be aggravated. And then when it's safe, pull back on. Okay? Beware of drowsy drivers. A lot of times I had to go to Wadley, Alabama to pick up a load before I would drive for the rest of the night. I left Opelika and I got behind a driver. He was all over the road. All over the road. I didn't even attempt to try to pass him. He was going 30 miles an hour, he'd go 40. Then he'd drop back down. He'd be on that side of the road for a while, and then this side of the road. And we got up a ways, and he pulled over. And I wasn't too close to him. I wasn't blinding him because I didn't dare get that close because I didn't know what he was going to do. He stopped at a house up there. It's got a nice little white picket fence around it. And then I got about a mile down the road, and he came back out. I guess he realized that was not his house. He was something. It could have been drugs. It could have been something else. But I never, ever got out of the truck by myself. If I had a radio, one night I was going up 85, and this driver was saying, "Can somebody make a phone call for me?" This was before cell phone time. And I said, "Yeah, where are you?" And he told me the exit. He was broke down. He said, "I've been sitting here for 3 hours trying to get somebody to make a phone call for me." You can't take a chance. So I went just a little past that exit, got his information, and then went up the road and made that phone call for him. Okay? Now, if I was with another driver, I would stop, but I wouldn't ever stop by myself. I would stop, and that's something else I wanted to pass on to you. Don't ever go into a rest area at night. Just don't do it. Okay? Daytime is a whole different thing, but nighttime, stay out of them. Instead of a truck stop, you won't find me in a truck stop at night either, especially if I had to park way out there. I'm not going to walk through all those trucks. Okay? I found fuel stops, and they're just a little bigger than a gas station. And one night, I got out of the truck, and this woman comes up to me, and she says, started her spiel on wanting money, and I said, "I'm a truck driver. Do I look like I have money?" And I kept walking. But you run into all different kinds of people. This saved my life. This tells you what's on every exit in the United States on the interstate system. It tells you if it's on the right side or on the left side, which was fantastic because when you pull doubles, you don't want to get off on a road because you can't turn around. You'll end up somewhere having to pull them apart, turn them around, and put them back together. So you're really, really leery. I pulled double trailers for 18 years. So, but this, you can buy it at truck stops. You can get it off Amazon. But it's a lifesaver, okay? Beware of drowsy drivers. I want to pass on some of the things I did. From day one, I used a CB radio. I used a CB radio at home before I ever got in a truck, so I was very used to it, and most drivers are. And in the last years, when I didn't close to retirement, I would have it on real low, where if I heard accident, detour, some kind of keyword, then I would turn it back up. I listened to CDs on tape, CD stories, and I used up every one of them they had at the Opelika Library, and then I went over to the Auburn Library for a while, and when I used them up, they had some new ones at the Opelika Library. But I'm not suggesting that you do that, but that's one of the things that help me stay awake. If you drink coffee, the good part about that, it doesn't necessarily keep you awake, but 20 minutes down the road, you're going to have to stop. So I would put Cheerios in a bag and eat one at a time. I'm not kidding, because the fact of just moving your hands keeps you awake. And you want to get Cheerios with almost no sugar. Don't go to a truck stop or to a place and eat a candy bar. The worst thing you can do. And a 15-minute nap, believe it or not, is better than 10 cups of coffee. And if you have to stop somewhere, and there isn't a gas station or something like that, in Georgia there'll be signs on the road, you can't stop on the ramp, okay? If you're sleepy, stop on the ramp. Because if that trooper or cop comes by and says something, say, man, I was at the end of my rope. I had to get off. They're not going to say a word to you. I would get off, when I got close to Atlanta coming back down, if I was the least little bit sleepy, I would get off on the ramp. But don't get off on the exit ramp. Go across and park on the other side, because the cars coming off the interstate are fast, okay? On the other side, they're slow. They're just starting. So there's less likelihood of you getting hit or anything. I would take a 15-minute nap, and I'm going to tell you, I can literally put myself to sleep. I would sit in the truck and just lean back, and I go, Linda, if you can't sleep, just rest your eyes. And very shortly, I'd be asleep. I'd set my clock. Don't sleep over half an hour. It'll actually make you more sleepy because you're going into REM sleep. You're better off just doing 15, 20 minutes.
When you started driving, did you get any hassle being female from other drivers? Or
Did I get problems? No.
any smart remarks or anything?
No, I'd get to construction sites, and I was standing there talking to one of the supervisors, and this man comes around me. He's looking all the way around me. And I go, can I help you? And he goes, no, and he walks away. I guess he was checking to see if I was a woman. But I'd get to a construction site, and I'd park out because I didn't know where they wanted the load. And I'd walk in, and I go, where do you want this? And he's, can you drive it in here? And I go, yeah. And, but I had a load going to Fort Benning, and I was going down Victory Drive. I was starting to go up the hill toward Fort Benning, and I saw this yellow car. And I thought, man, if that taxi would just get out of my way, I could get over. And this yellow car was next to me, then it was behind me, then it was over here, and then I noticed the blue light on top, and I thought, uh-oh, not good. So I went across 185, and there used to be a rest area. They pulled me over. It was DOT. And they come up to me and they go, have you ever been on portable scales? And I go, no. My husband had told me about portable scales. He says, well, we're going to teach you. And that's where you put the front axle on the scale. Then you pull up, put the next axle, and they figure out exactly how much you weigh. I was 12,500 over gross. And they told me at the end, they gave me a ticket. At that time, it was like $256. And They told me because I was as nice as I was, I didn't cause them a problem, I didn't curse them out or anything, that we're going to say we stopped you at the exit, which my exit was maybe not even half a mile away. But they went ahead and let me go. But technically, they could have said, okay, contact your company, they're going to have to come and take that off. And the only other ticket I got was over an axle. A truck can be over gross, but it can be over an axle. There's standards. You can only have so many pounds or whatever on the steering axles, only so many on here. Well, there's two ways to adjust that. In Georgia, they stopped me, and I was over on an axle, and he says, do you want to move or adjust your thing? I said, is that going to keep me from getting a ticket? And he'd go, no. I go, no. I mean, why bother? You're going to get the ticket anyway. But in Virginia, you have to get it right, or they won't let you leave. So the truck itself has a fifth wheel, and you can change and move it around. And then the back axles on the trailer can move back and forth. Have you ever wondered why a truck is called a semi? I wondered that too. I looked it up. A semi has the wheels on the back, so it's only half of a wagon. A whole wagon or whole wagon would have wheels on the front too, so they call them semis. Okay. I'm going to give you some information. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates 100,000 police-reported crashes are the direct result of driver fatigue. And this is a couple of years back. 75% of all accidents with trucks are started with cars. In other words, the car initiated the accident. Avoid driving between 11 p.m. and 6 in the morning. And I'm going to add to that between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. Those are the times that your body's telling you to go sleep. Like you stopped and got some lunch, now you're digesting food, it's going to make you sleepy at night. And I used to hate Friday night. That's when everybody comes from north and heads south. They're trying to make the most of their vacation, okay? And now it's even worse because people used to have 2-3 weeks vacation. Now they don't even have that because they've moved around. And now they use their week vacation one day at a time. So they either tack it on Friday or on Monday, okay? So now the worst time to be out there is on a Thursday night or on a Monday night because they're trying to get back where they can go to work. The best way to stay awake is to scan the road. Continuously scan the road, okay? In truck driving school, we're taught to look at this mirror, look at the gauges, look at this mirror, and continue on, back and forth, beside looking up here. In a big truck, the gauges are all pointing one direction. They do it on purpose, I guess. So when you're scanning, all of a sudden you see one like this, you go, uh-oh. You know something's wrong, okay? The first year I drove for overnight transportation, I got a truck that my husband had had 4 years prior. I turned that truck in for repair 35 times in 1 year. I told him if I would break down just one time with the same thing, I'd be able to tell him what was wrong with the truck. So I got a lot of experience with that. Let me see. Truck drivers are taught to signal early, signal continuously, cancel their signal, and I'm saying cancel because in a truck, they don't automatically turn off. So if you get behind a truck and the signal's on, it's probably daylight. You can't, a lot of times you don't see the indicator. In the clicking, it does make a clicking sound, but some of these trucks are so loud you don't ever hear the clicking, okay? Always, this is again truck. Have you ever wondered, in Atlanta when I was taking that hotel up there, I'd go up a 5-lane road, and then I would have to turn into a 3-lane road, but it was actually 1 lane because people parked on both sides. I had to literally go left 5 lanes to get enough turn space to go down that 1-lane road. So when you see them, don't automatically get over here or over here, because I had my signal on this way and I would just go 1 lane at a time, because early in the morning, like 7, they'll run over you. They don't care if you're in a truck or not. And then you'd have to go down this 1-lane road, 1-way road, okay? So when I see a truck coming up to a stop sign, I'm behind it or it's coming toward me, I would stop further back, okay? Because they need, years ago when I was taught truck driving, go up to stop, make a turn, okay? It doesn't matter, go out this way. Now they want trucks to go into the intersection and turn back that way, because it's less problem. Has everybody heard about UPS, the delivery drivers? They make mostly right-hand turns. Did you know that? Right-hand turns. Because the left-hand turns are more dangerous.
I spent 7 years with UPS, not driving package cars for seniors, and it was 35 years ago, 36 years ago. But even then, that was one of those rules, and the reason was that about 80, at that time, about 85 or 86% of their accidents occurred with a left-hand turn. And in those days, and probably still today, nobody owns and operates more vehicles on the road than United Park Service.
I never drove one day for UPS, but my retirement check comes from UPS because they took over the company I used to work for.
Were you ever in a union?
No. They tried. Both overnight transportation and Estes Express Line, they tried to unionize, but neither one went union. Now, after they became UPS, they were union. This little book has to be in every truck. This one, and then there's a yellow book that gives, you've seen, if you see a tanker truck and it's got a placard on it with a number, that tells you what's in that trailer. 1203, if you ever see 1203, that's gasoline. Okay. Trucks, do you know what one of the most flammable things are to have in a truck? Hairspray. Trucks, when they're loaded, if they have more than one thing, anything that's corrosive, flammable, anything like that has to be loaded at the tail end of that trailer so it can be taken out. Okay. We had a team behind us. We came out of California And we went through the scales, and that team got pulled over. With overnight transportation, you might have, well, Estes too. I had to take a test for hazardous material. And whenever you renew your license, you have to retake that hazardous material test because it changes all the time. Because I was born in the Czech Republic, it took me 6 months to get my hazardous material back. I've been driving almost 25 years, and now I had to verify that that I wasn't going to take over the country or whatever they were talking about. And I had to literally, they turned me down the first time. I had to write them a letter, say, I don't have anybody over there. Nobody can blackmail me. This is Driver's Guide to FMCSR, all the rules on the road, and it's a lot thicker than this now. This is about 10 years old. The other book is the one that has all the different placards. Let me give you an example. Say you have say I have flammable and corrosive in the trailer, then I can use, to shortcut it, I can use the dangerous placard, okay? If I have more than 2, then I've got to paste these on a lot of times. You can get a fine just as big by leaving the placards on there and not having it in your trailer as not having the placards on there. There's a lot of stuff to remember on driving a truck.
Do you remember what's the title of the book that has all those warnings, hazardous material?
Oh,
Because Judith needs that book because she would like to tell me what's in that truck I'm about to pass.
you can buy it at truck stops. It's a little book like this, but it's yellow. It'd probably be fun to watch that.
If you get a ticket, you have to pay. Does that ticket come out of your pocket?
Depends on what it is. I drove for overnight, and oh, that's the other thing I want to say. Have you ever been down the road and the 2 trucks are together and they just won't move? They're governed at a certain speed. I was with Estes, I was governed at 69, and then they had too many accidents, and it's not the company that governs it, it's the insurance company that makes them govern those trucks at a certain speed. So they put it down to 67. Now I'm going down the road, and this truck's going 67, okay? On even road, I won't even try to pass him. We all know what speed they're governed at. But going up the hill, if my load's lighter and his is heavier, I'm going to try to pass him. But going down the road on the other end, he's going to pass me back because he's heavier. So a lot of times you see this zigzag thing going on. Well, me, I get on the radio and go, if you want to be in the front, go ahead and go. I don't care. I'm getting paid by the mile. It doesn't matter how fast I go or how slow I go, okay? I'd have drivers come up behind me. All the trailers that I hauled were sealed. They had a seal on there. And I had a driver come up so close behind me, I go, can you read the numbers yet? And then that causes them to back up. So, I said I was going to give you a chance to ask questions. Let's see. Oh, have you ever told your children when you were younger to do the horn? Guess what? They don't have that anymore. They have the regular horn on the steering wheel, or they've got a valve that they can. But I never blew my horn. If a little kid in the back went like this, I waited until that car got behind me, because the parent didn't know he was doing it, and if you blow the horn with me, they're all over the road. So I'd wait. I'd either go, it's broken, or I'd wait for him to get by, and then I'd blow my horn. Uh, Have y'all been to Walmart or, well, even up here? I don't know why they don't put traffic signals in front of exits in Walmarts. Like Opelika, you've got to go and do the turn lane thing. I now, because of my age, go around and go out at the light. Much better. The other thing, I know I'm getting off track, but when I park at Walmart, I always park on this particular lane. That way I know I can find my car. Because if I park there, I go, which car was I in today? Also, park further out. If you're able to walk, you're better off parking further out because there's less chance of you hitting something or somebody walking behind your vehicle, and you know they do it. They can see your thing. The other thing you can do is put your four-way flashers on. At least they know, they can see you're moving. So, one reason drivers get tired, truck drivers get tired, anybody that's driving for a long time, when you're scanning, look for people, traffic light signs, debris on the road, signals, slick spots, intersections, merging lanes, road shoulders, construction zones, school zones, stopped vehicles, emergency situations, all that stuff. Slippery roads. Not only, we don't get much black ice here, but one way that you can, if you ever have to drive up north, if you'll look in your mirror and you stop seeing spray, you better be careful. Okay? It's freezing up. The road is freezing up if you don't see that spray back there. Let me give you some statistics. The faster you go, the longer it will take you to stop. It takes more than 8 times the distance to stop a vehicle going 50 miles per hour than it does going 15. I have another question. How fast do you think a truck has to go for it to hydroplane? I'm talking a big truck. Any guesses? You know what hydroplaning is, right? It's when you run in the water and it literally almost floats across the water and you lose control. 15 miles an hour, a truck can hydroplane. I'm talking about a big truck. So if he can hydroplane 15 mile an hour, how fast do you think you have to go? Even less to lose control of that vehicle. There's 3 different ways a tire can go on a truck, okay? One, and let me explain this to you too. Most trucks have retread tires on them. Some trucks will have all new tires on the truck itself and then recaps on the rest. All the trucks I drove, except for this company, all I had was new steering tires. Everything else was recapped. With overnight transportation, they had their own company that recapped these tires. So a tire can, one, come off in little pieces. You'll see them out on the road. They call them gators. Little pieces, okay? During the day, I'll see it. At night, I'll see the spark because they're wrapped in metal. And you'll see the little sparks as you're driving. The other one is the entire tread comes off at one time, and when that happens, it'll actually jerk that truck backwards. But when it does, it usually takes the back lights and everything else out. Sometimes it'll pull back and pull the mud flap in, and it stops the truck. And the third way is I get to my destination or somewhere along the line where I've checked, and I've had a silent flat tire. And you couldn't feel any difference or anything like that. One night I had 2 silent ones on the same side of the truck. I got out and looked, and that truck like this. It was fairly heavy load, and it was literally listing like this.
But when this thing happened, it sounded like a big gun. So what happened?
That was a big tread when that happens. Yeah, that's usually what happens. Be careful. Don't get too close. When it goes like that, that big piece can come right through your windshield if you're too close. Be really careful on that. The other thing you've got to watch for exhaust and brakes. I had surgery up in Atlanta, and I couldn't drive, so my mom came down. She lived in Atlanta and drove me up. We're going back up, and she's just busy talking German. And I said, Mama, you need to get in the other lane. She doesn't pay any attention. I said, Mama, you need to move in the other lane. She's still talking. I go, Mama, get in the other lane. The truck that she was coming up behind, the brakes had locked up. And that truck was going to come to a screeching halt in very short order. So you've got to smoke. You'll see white smoke come out from under. If you see black smoke, that truck's going to come out too, because the turbo has gone. It'll literally cover the whole 2 lanes when it does, when the turbo goes. Trying to think of what else. Do what?
You want to know what turbo was?
A turbo? God, I'm not a mechanic. I used to tell people all the time, if I put that key in that truck and it doesn't turn over, it's somebody else's problem. That's why mechanics are born. It's like an exhaust type system. And I've had all kinds of breakdowns. I had a flat tire one night, and we could call tire people, and they came and did it. And I went, and what we didn't realize, when I went to leave, I couldn't, because it had taken an air line out, and it had the whole thing cut off. And I ran out of hours, had to take hours in Chattanooga, went down to the dollar store, got me a T-shirt, a toothbrush. I had nothing with me because I came home every day. So I'm trying to give you, let's see, hold on.
Got a question for you on that.
Uh-huh.
Have you noticed driving tendencies, different driving tendencies depending on what part of the country you're in? For example, if I'm following a car and they're not using a signal, usually I figure that it's going to have a Georgia tag on it.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. It's everywhere. I don't drive anymore because I've had back surgery, neck surgery, shoulder surgery, knee surgery, and a few other ones beside that. Trucks are not real good on bodies, except my husband. He's 82, and there's not a thing wrong with him. He was going to retire at 80, and the doctor said, "What for? There's nothing wrong with you." So he kept driving. He doesn't drive every day anymore. He told me he can now tell him where to go. But he likes that money in his pocket, so he keeps driving. He said, if I don't drive, what would I do? Sit around? So he drives. But let's see. Miles per hour, 15 miles an hour. You will travel 22 feet in 1 second. Your reaction time will drive you another 17 feet. Vehicle braking distance is 29 feet, and total stopping distance is 46 feet. Now let me tell you about 55 miles an hour. You'll travel 81 feet in 1 second, 61 feet just reacting, okay? 390 feet vehicle braking distance for a total of 451 feet at 55 miles an hour. Don't try at night, don't try to, when I was younger, I never put my high beams on. I was always afraid I'd forget to turn them back off. I drive with my high beams on. I don't care where I am. If somebody's coming, I turn it back down. But I want to see what's in front of me. With the high beam, you've got enough time to get your vehicle stopped. Okay? There's a couple of times where the road is really, really dangerous. That's right after it rains. If it hasn't rained for a couple of weeks, and then the road is very slick. Oil has dropped off your cars and things, and when you go to stop, it's at the top of that water, and it's going to be hard to stop. The other thing you've got to be careful of is new pavement. That's an oil product. And when it rains, until it gets that grayish look, you've got to be careful of that pavement. Really close, especially out on the interstate. One time out in Oklahoma, I'm driving along. They had just laid new pavement. There wasn't a line anywhere. I felt like I was in the middle of a lake. I slowed that truck down so fast, I couldn't see where I was. I mean, it was just like a wide open space.
Those lines really make a difference, though.
The what?
Those lines in the road.
Yeah, make all the difference in the world, especially if you're on a two-lane road, to have that line on the right-hand side, because at oncoming traffic, you've got that guide, you know, to go by. You've probably all heard the noise that some trucks make. That's an exhaust brake or an engine brake. It helps the truck get stopped. I drove a Jake brake. You can engage that and just barely tap on brakes in a truck. And this is something else if you ever pull like a trailer or something. In a truck, if I'm coming down a mountain, my foot's going to be on the brake the entire time, just holding it in place. If you get off and on a brake, it's like you're putting air to the brake, putting fire to the brake. I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but when I'm going downhill, say speed limit's 35, my foot's on the brake the entire, might go up to 40, and then I'm gonna bring it back down to 30, somewhere in that range the whole time, and never take my foot off the brake. Okay?
I used to hear people talk, that's how you burn up your brakes doing that.
It's like you're putting air to the fire when you do that. Okay. You've seen ramps, right, where trucks can go up into the ramps. I've only seen one truck in a ramp. They won't go in there because it costs $2,500 to get pulled back out of there, and it's the driver's fault. So it's on him. Somebody asked me about tickets. With overnight transportation, their speed was around about 65. If I got a ticket over 5 miles an hour and couldn't get it off my name in court, my job was gone. They now have Qualcomm on all these trucks. They know where these trucks are within feet. They have drivers, they get out west somewhere or something, and they say, I've had it, and they leave the truck. They have no problem finding the truck. They do it all the time. There's a company in the United States, that's all they do is go out and retrieve the trucks.
Well, what happens then if you just walked off and left the truck?
It depends on, like, Swift Transportation is one of the biggest companies in the United States. I used to train for them. They will pay for your school, but you have to stay with them for a certain period of time. They pay it out on a monthly basis. Instantly, they will charge you. In other words, you'll have to come, say your school costs $5,000, you instantly have to pay that $5,000 back to the company. They also penalize you for leaving the truck. So. Do what?
We're on the museum's time now.
Okay, okay. Any other questions? Jim, I don't know if I answered your questions or not.
You did indeed. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Clark, you mentioned several times being drowsy. What is the status of testing people that want to be drivers for sleep apnea nowadays?
Are you saying that we get more drowsy than other people?
No, I'm saying there's a condition called sleep apnea.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember.
Some companies require that new job applicants have to pass a sleep test or the company won't hire them.
Some of them do.
Or if they pass it, if they're diagnosed, they have to be treated.
Yeah,
Sleep apnea.
yeah.
Do you know anything about what the current status of that is?
No, that I don't know. I know with one company I had to do a physical. They do all kinds of stuff. You've got to bend over and all that. I had to take a lie detector test for one company. I do know, what is it that you take for when you try to quit smoking? What is it? Chantix. Drivers are not allowed to take that. I do know that. They can't take that at all. Whenever I went to the doctor for anything, if he prescribed anything, the first thing I said, this is not going to make me sleepy or drowsy, is it? Because they've got alternative things that they can give you to do that. But if anyone wants to see these are just some of the trucks I drove up here. And this is one of the race cars that we hauled. And it went about 190 miles an hour. And this vehicle right here is what they call a toter home. It's like a motor home, but it's more commercial. And it had a 48, I can't remember, it was 50 feet trailer on it. It was in Wisconsin, and they decided it was too long. So they brought a wrecker in almost as long to pull them out of Wisconsin. I'm not kidding. Turns out this was the scale man's brother-in-law. So there's still things like that.